matters at the board meeting. To allow for public participation, a period not to exceed 30 minutes has been set aside at the beginning and end of the board meetings. As a general rule, public participation will be limited to 5 minutes total per speaker. Anyone who wants to speak should state their name and sign the sheet. Comments should be general in nature and should not involve concerns regarding a specific employee of the district, as the board has a separate protocol for these matters. This is a protection for school employees to assure their due process rights in a public forum. Individuals wishing to raise a specific concern should follow the regulations outlined in policy 1400. Would anyone like to speak today?
No.
And I don't have any emails.
Thanks, Karen. There is nothing this time under information for the public, so we will move on to the presentation, our civics presentation.
All right, sounds good. Just give me a moment. I'll share the screen in case anyone's watching.
Can you all see this at all? Try to just.
I think it's working good, Joe. So this is the
Thank you.
second presentation on civics. So those of you who are in attendance here who are joining the conversation midstream. The board enacts goals annually, and one of the goals that the board has put forth this year is to have a good handle on what our civics footprint is for our students, and to find ways to potentially amplify our civic engagement with our students. So our first presentation that I reviewed was how we promote civics in the classroom, and just some of the highlights of that as I bring this down. Obviously, the most appropriate location for civic discourse is the social studies content and the social studies classroom. And I circled some particular grade level areas here because these are the areas that most readily transfer to some of the enrichment activities that are the focus of this particular presentation. But you'll see there is a progression at the K through 2 levels. It's really just about understanding your place in society and your community, local community. And then you start to expand your understanding of how your place in the community compares to other communities around the world. So by grade 3, you're looking at communities around the world. You're looking at, when you get to 4th grade, then the layer of some degree of bureaucracy and how communities function and governments function, that starts to take place. By 5th, 6th grade, you're looking at comparing that with the world. And then you enter, once again, another layer back through US history in grade 7 and 8. Then you go back to world history, 9 and 10. And then you go back into 11th and 12th grade history. So it's the spiral effect where you get more information about your local community and your local country. Then you cross-reference it with world and keep doing that until you have the onion is fairly descriptive of how different societies function. So for our purposes, though, I just wanted to note that my communities around the world, local history and local government, history of the US and participation in government, those are things that are sort of booknoting this presentation when we think about what we do. So our civics framework ultimately takes place in our social studies curriculum. So our framework prepares students for college careers and civic life. And our learning standards, there's 5 of them in social studies. And the 5th one is the most explicit: civics, citizenship, and government. So begins the rest of this presentation, which really is just sort of a list. And this list has served a lot of different purposes, one of which I'll talk about in my superintendent's report in a little bit. But when we began the Community Schools Initiative 3 years ago, Mr. Clark and I sat down, and one of the goals that we had was to try to replicate. Oh, well, you're actually going more. Okay. I'm just.
Tim's over there.
I am so sorry.
Literally melting
I
here.
turned it off.
Okay.
I turned it over.
What about that one?
I'll turn it
If you
down.
don't mind. I just don't want to. I wouldn't be the first to self-immolate in a civics presentation, but I hope to not be the last. Okay, so let's continue here. So when we started our community schools initiative, basically we had a patchwork understanding of all the things that our kids do. We knew that we had some areas of core importance, but we didn't know at which grade level how pervasive activities were, and were they one-offs or were they sustaining activities? Or if we had enrichment and family supports for kids, is it dependent on an individual or is it part of a program? So we've worked with our staff to kind of just identify the different types of trips that we do. So I'm just going to go forward. And the ones that I've highlighted are ones that speak very clearly to those subcategories I referenced before: my community, local history, local government, participation in government, and U.S. history. So starting at kindergarten level, remember that's all about understanding yourself and your connection to the community. So we have a bevy of trips and enrichment opportunities for the kids at that level. Some are just fun, team building. So they go to Tucker Farms, they visit the fire station, they go to Whiteface Lodge, they go to Elderwood and the Olympic Training Center, the Whiteface Club, John Brown Farm, the Adirondack Carousel, Teddy Bear Park, and recently we started an adaptive skating program to offer additional support for students who need that level of support to skate. So of our kindergarten trips that are recurring, Fire Station, Elderwood, and John Brown speak most to our civic engagement. When we get to first grade, that starts to open up some additional trips for the kids. So we do the annual fall trip to the Orchard I went on this year, which was great fun. We go to Wilmington Beach. And then the first that pops up that really finds itself in that civic realm once again is the Community Day. And that's a community and careers unit that takes place across first grade. And different professionals come in and they talk about what their career is and you know, their role in the community. Elderwood and Olympic Training Center, once again, that's almost a recurring trip in the elementary school. We do lots of hikes. So there's the Baxter Mountain Hike. We start our LPCA performances at that level. And then we bring in speakers. So we do holiday traditions from around the world, just as an initial foray into understanding the differences between cultures and our own. And then we have volunteers. So they do craft day. We have guest readers. And once again, the adaptive skating program. Okay, at the second grade level, they continue with the LPCA trips. They go to North Country School for nutrition and cooking experiences. And then we start our Ag in the Classroom unit with Cornell Cooperative Education. We used to have a trip to the Wild Center Museum at second grade level, and you'll see that now has been pushed to a different grade level. But nothing explicit in terms of enrichment at this level for civic education. All right, when we get to third grade, the students get a lot busier. So once again, there's another hike up Mount Seymour. We start our cross country skiing at Mount Van Hovenberg. That's actually taking place on Friday of this week for third grade. We begin our trip to the Cornell Sugar House. That's a continuation of the Ag program through Cornell. And then we tour the Olympic Museum. And in the subheadings there, the descriptor, I put Olympic legacy there. Just, I know that's something that Orta is passionate about, promoting Olympic legacy, and finding ourselves and our role in the community is important too for us. So I notate that throughout. The students go to the luge track. This is the year they go to the Wild Center. They go to John Brown Farm again in third grade. There's more of a history focus and less of just we're outside in a pretty place walking focus. But Henry's Woods does fulfill that latter portion from them. The kids also go to Heaven Hill. Ag in the Classroom continues, and adaptive skating is still an option for students. All right, at fourth grade, that's when we do 3 seasons at the Adirondack Lodge. So students hike Mount Joe, they do snowshoeing and animal track identification and mapping skills. They start nature journaling as well. This is where the instructors at the Adirondack Lodge come and work with the students in the classroom. The trip to Adirondack Museum and Blue Mountain Lake, animal adaptations workshop, Fort Ticonderoga workshop, which I'll reference again when we get towards 7th grade. Adaptive skating once again, and then our 46-year book club celebration. So seeing roughly, 1 or 2 civic-minded trips or offerings at each grade level, with the exception of 2nd grade so far. Fifth grade, this is where things really start to amp up. So at fifth grade, we see students traveling to Proctor's Theater for a cultural trip, taking in a show. They have a second trip where they visit the legislature. They go to a courthouse. Grants Cottage is usually also on the docket. And you'll note below, there's also a classroom visit from Judge DiAgostino. So the courthouse that they tour is the judge who comes to the school and works with them as well. And then there's just the usual end of year fun, the water trip park to Six Flags, still adaptive skating, and still the 46er book club. All right, then we move up to the big school at sixth grade level. There's the trip to Mount Van Hoevenberg and the ski jumps. This one is a favorite of the sixth graders. That's where they all get to ride the, why am I blanking out on what it's called?
Coaster.
Thank you. The Cliffside Coaster. They love that. And then the Learn from the Pros program is something that has been sort of exhuming the footprint of something that existed a long time ago. They were called Lunch and Learns for a while. But this is where, once again, we bring in professionals from the community and they work with the students to describe their career and how they got into that and to give kids a better understanding of what the career options are in front of them. At sixth grade, they go back to the Wild Center, more of a science focus at that point, less on an experiential cultural focus. We incorporate the sliding event trips, and this is also when students are eligible to attend all county music, so they can go for band or chorus. That includes a trip to Lake George for band and chorus students that's taken place the last couple of years. And so with Lake George, we do an exchange of students where they get to work with different instructors and still continuing the adaptive skating. So seventh grade, trip to Fort Ticonderoga and Lake Champlain. So this is a new one, and I'll share my superintendent's report a bit more, but we did sit down with the Educational Opportunity Fund Board 1 or 2 weeks ago and talked about our excitement in having this become a mainstay for the seventh grade, because this seventh grade is a year that typically we haven't seen as much enrichment activity. So we're hoping to have that supported, and EdOp seemed very excited about the prospect. Once again, all counties still the same, still the eligibility for the other two programs as well, but not a lot in the seventh grade area. So this is an area that we want to try and boost if we can. Eighth grade is another pivotal year in terms of enrichment for our kids, and certainly probably our most civic minded year of all of them. Students start off, they go to the North Elba Historical Society, both to learn about our history, but also to learn the skill of being a good patron at a museum. And all of that is predicated on them going to Washington, D.C. in March, where they will attend numerous Smithsonian museums and go to the mall and the monuments and all of those things. So eighth grade is a big year for promotion of civics. Sure. Thank you. Then we have the Lake Placid Center for the Arts once again at the eighth grade level. And the next 3 are all continuing trips available to students at that age level. And by eighth grade, students are now eligible to participate in the robotics club competition in Albany. If they, it's not civics per se, but it's another opportunity. When we get to high school, that's where things really break into content bands. So there aren't any specific civic-minded trips here, but nonetheless, I'll just share with you just for understanding enrichment purposes. Music, we now have area all-state. Unfortunately, I think our all-county was canceled due to weather this time, which was unfortunate, Osceola closing, but the kids look forward to those festivals for sure. The New York City trip is once every 4 years, the students fundraise for it. They go and take in a show, and then they tour New York City as well. And our LPCA partnership continues. We have professional musician workshops. So when musicians come in to perform, they also then come to the school and work directly with different groups in the music department. In art, they have an annual museum to Montreal to see the museums. Our special education students, they continue with the adaptive skating program. By the time they're in 9th grade, students who are eligible also have vocational preparation services through a program called Access VR. And our juniors and seniors have the ability to have someone help them enter the workforce to learn those skills in advance. And then we have a functional skills program for certain special education students, and they go to the Sable River Freshwater Center at Uline Farm. Technology, the Robotics Club, they travel annually for the Tech Robotics competition. The library level, they do the Literacy Book Day, which is a whole day centered around reading groups and summer reading. And then foreign language, we have different trips that don't happen annually, but certainly over the last couple of years, Montreal's been a mainstay. They've also visited Quebec City, Fort Chamblay, and Cuba in 2018. So pretty cool. And then this is a previous offering, but now back. At Social Studies, we offer Organization of American States, or OAS. This is a Plattsburgh State dual enrollment class. Students take on the role of a South or Central or North American country in the Organization of American States. They research it, and then they represent those countries at a conference in May at Plattsburgh State. At the science level, our science department is quite busy. Of all of these activities, going to the watershed analysis, Ampersand Mountain for Old Growth Lab, Tablelands Farm on Bear Cub Road, the Adirondack Youth Climate Summit I was able to attend this year. It was great. They had several top speakers from the area. Bill McKibben has spoken there in the past, if you're familiar with him. Kurt Stager from Paul Smiths was the guest speaker this year. But the entire purpose of the Youth Climate Summit is civic engagement. Students are encouraged to take on different platforms and try to advance those platforms on how to preserve the Adirondack Park and climate writ large. And then with the pristine climate comes sewage. So the Lake Placid Sewage Treatment Plant is also a trip of the Environmental Club. Atmospheric Research Station at Whiteface is a routine trip. Once again, the Maple Farm, Essex Farm. This year they've gone to Upstone Materials in Saranac Lake, and they all have quite a few guest speakers as well. So then just thinking about just the gamut of programming for our kids, under the community schools lens, that doesn't necessarily fall into a particular class or content area. We have our Learn from the Pros. We have our Blue Bomber Fun Day, our LPCA, facilitated grades 6 through 12. Those are the different presentations that you saw strewn about in the presentation for 6 through 12. That's supported by EdUp. Students who attend the trip to Proctor's, that's supported by community schools. We do our staycation in April. We've also done our summer programming through that. We have several ORDA events that are available for the students, including ECACs, World Championships, and in 2 weeks, there'll be a magician at the Olympic Center that they'll get to go to. ORDA and community schools arrange the adaptive skating program. We've done a film forum the last 2 years where filmmakers come in and work with the 6th graders and talk about, usually this is in, this coincides with the Lake Placid Film Festival. And then our summer enrichment programming, which we do a robotics, a STEM camp, a K camp, and a sports camp. Those are the 4 that we do. So some of the things that just may be unrealized opportunities. First of all, I'll just take a step back and say, look, we do a lot. You know, I think our school does a great job in getting our kids out, getting people in. But some of the areas that are pertinent to civics in particular, we don't have a visit to the post office or to the town hall. It would be nice to have attendance at a public meeting, be it a school board meeting or a village or town meeting, be a required component of students graduating or maybe moving from middle school into high school. That's certainly something that's on the docket. We also don't have anything where we're going to Elizabethtown to visit the Essex County offices. But that's just kind of giving you some insight into some of the enrichment aspects where we're trying to promote civics. Any questions or anything?
No, it's great. I think another one maybe under the potential could be something that we link it to an election day, especially for maybe the high school students or something that I don't know the legalities with it, but visiting, a polling site that day or, actually have them see what the booth looks like and how they vote, that kind of thing might be helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. And we help with voter enrollment too, when the
Right, yeah.
students are of age, so that'd be great too.
I mean, a lot of parents will take their children when they're young into the voting booths and let them vote, but for them to actually really kind of get more involved in the process, I think might be nice.
So our third discussion of civics will be to evaluate the recently created New York State Civic, why am I blanking out? I want to call this the Seal of Readiness, but it's the
Footprint?
Civic Readiness Initiative. And the Seal of Civic Readiness is something that districts can apply for, and if students take enough social studies classes and complete enough additional requirements, then on their graduation diploma, they have a seal that indicates that they've achieved this additional level of civic education. So I anticipate having some discussion with you probably in April.
Thanks so much, Chip. We're moving on to the auditorium upgrade discussion. Again, I will defer to Tim and to Dana. Thank you.
Sure. So when last we discussed the possibility of upgrading the performance lighting in the auditorium, I think there was a degree of sticker shock in the room looking at the bids. And so from that time, Dana certainly has taken the lead on this effort, and I'll have you speak to it in a second. But we did have some conversations with the architects to provide some different options for the board and to assure that there are no regulatory or safety concerns with our present system, of which there are not. So, Dana, you want to talk a little about the evolution of where we left off from our last meeting?
Yeah, we met with the art John, who was here, was part of our presentation a couple of meetings ago. We also brought in Brendan Gotham, drama club advisor, in on the discussion as well to kind of get his take on what was needed in there, what we could get away with in terms of the minimum number of lights compared to what is out there. So I think we did our fair due diligence of gathering additional information. The last meeting, we included under the information for the board, the three different options that Mosaic provided us. One being the current, bid price, and then the other two, basically scaling back some of the items on there. Really, what it comes down to is if we wanted to get to the dollar amounts that was initially thrown out there when we started this project, we would have to scale back considerably in terms of the lighting to the point where, as Brendan Gotham stated, we would actually be going backwards in terms of our current lighting structure. Even though they would be new lights and LED lights and stuff like that, would not be able to provide the same type of lighting that we currently use or do in there. So in reality, if you're looking at it in terms of scaling back, because the original bids came in was probably more than what we need, but is typical of what is seen in an auditorium setting anyway. The option, it says scheme one, the middle option is really where it would probably fall in line with scaling back, but maintaining what we have, just newer technology. And that was that would come in at a little over $1 million for that. So less than the 1.3 million, but not the mid 900,000 that was originally presented and given to us as the ballpark. Questions you may have?
Any other thoughts? If not, we'll move on to reports to the board. And the first one again is Dana, the budget performance report, please.
Sure. So hopefully you've all had a chance to review the document I provided you. Looking at it, so we are about halfway through the year. Our expenses, if you know, where we currently sit, we have expensed almost 60% in terms of where we typically are, you know, in terms of what we're budgeted. It's like 59% of our budget has been expensed. This is typical. So you look here and, you know, we're not seeing too many trends. Definitely the increase over year is a little higher than what is budgeted. It's probably so far the highest percentage of almost 8% above last year. But as I always say, all of this is always just a kind of you know, a look at a moment in time is really what it comes down to. When I put this together on Friday, you know, we're sitting at about $1 million over what we were last year. So that's definitely higher than, but when I looked this morning, you know, that's like 700,000. So it literally, it changes on a day-to-day basis. So in that regard, we're trending where we, you know, typically would trend. There's nothing that is out of the ordinary or unusual at this point, you know, where we're raising red flags to hold our spending type of deal. On the revenue side, again, we're sitting at about a 3% increase over where we were last year at this time. That's trending what we would have predicted. You know, our budget was built on a little over a 3% increase from last year. So revenue purposes, we're where we typically would be in halfway point. So all said, you know, expenditures and our revenue are, you know, kind of on par and on track where they should be at this time this year.
Any questions for Dana?
Same would go right into the treasury reports. That's me as well. Nothing unusual here, other than if you look at what our reserves are in terms of where we're keeping it on the column on the right-hand side, that is slowly going down because as the year progresses, we pull money out of that to pay the bills. You know, as I've said, right from the beginning of the year, most of our revenue comes the first few months, and then we just spend it down because that's, you know, 82% of our revenue comes from the taxpayers. So, you know, the trend is still there. You know, right now we only took in over $300,000 in cash receipts, but we had a little over $2 million go out in expenditures. So, but again, that is not unusual. You know, that is what typically happens each and every year. This is how our revenue base is built. So, you know, we're still sitting at $16.8 million sitting in our reserve accounts. You know, collecting some nice, you know, interest. So it's a nice thing about our rate of return right now, sitting in that class. It's about 4.5% that we're getting back. So, you know, we're trending about right now $360,000 that we've gained, you know, earned in revenue since the beginning of the year. You know, this is wonderful. That's awesome. Otherwise, everything is, you know, again, still flush with cash. We have enough money in the bank to pay our bills
It's always a good thing.
for the next several months.
Any other questions for Dana and the treasurer's report? Thanks, Dana. Moving on now to the superintendent's report and back to Tim again.
Sure.
Thank you.
So just some updates in some programs that are taking place or have taken place. So the first I want to share with you is our job and career training program. So presently that's the acronym is called the JACT program, and the student created emblem is the Rosie the Riveter muscle of the JACT program. But this is really a component of the STREAM program, our alternative program for 9th and 10th grade students. And over the past 2 years, students have received work-based learning internships and or paid work as a component of their instruction at the middle high school. So we have students entering their second round of JAC placements. So they're either going to be stationed at Locker Room 5 or the Crown Plaza. And previously, in their first placement, students were either at the Olympic Center, working with the town of North Alba, or Central Garage. So it's a great program that's been initiated by Ms. Boslett in the STREAM program and Mr. Clark. And last board meeting, you may recall that the creation of the JACT Club was something that the board authorized. And with that authorization comes the promise of expanded work-based learning opportunities for students outside of the STREAM program in 11th and 12th grade. So exciting developments there. Just wanted to apprise you briefly of something that's being dubbed the Community Connectivity Initiative. The first meeting of which is taking place next week. And this is something that the town of North Alba and the economic development arm of the town is putting together. It is a community committee, and it's looking at bike and walkability in the community. So they're meeting over the course of the year to make recommendations to improve safety and access, especially in light of popularity of the rail trail and the increased interest in cycling. And the school is represented in this dialogue by Sonia Franklin and Patricia Dan. So look forward to hearing from them on ways that we can ensure our roadways are safe and our walkways are safe for students and families to get to and from school, and to get from Newman Street Playground to Teddy Bear Playground and wherever else they want to go. Winter Carnival, just a brief look back. The carnival really was a great success. Thanks to Ryan and Colleen for being in attendance at Coronation. There were 2 rescheduling attempts, to which the weather was the culprit, and I was probably a likely second in having to move things around. But the Alumni Association, ORDA, Andy Myhill, the organizer of the Coronation ceremonies, Miss Lindsay and Miss Haymaker all showed incredible adaptability. I want to thank all of them. And just to give you a notion of the scale of this, so when we canceled for the Friday, that day, all of our middle school students were going to go to Mount Van Hovenberg or to go to Whiteface. And on a dime, ORDA figured out how to get equipment and lessons and tickets available for students on the Monday. So it was an incredible undertaking. And we leveraged some of our partnerships, like the Lake Placid Community Ski Program. Debbie Aronstone came and helped to give lessons to the students who were at Mount Van Hovenberg. So definitely took a village on this one, and just really grateful that we were able to bring it to fruition. I referenced before just the meeting with the EdOp board, but that's a great group of folks. John, you've spoken so highly of your time on the board at EdOp. And just to remind everyone here who may not be aware, but the Lake Placid Educational Opportunity Fund, their goal is to eliminate or defray any individual costs that students have to engage with academic or enrichment offerings through the school. So they do a wonderful job with that. And when we met with them and looked at the presentation I just shared with you, we started identifying, well, when you go to the orchard, students are supposed to bring $5 for a bag of apples. And so we started adding these things up, and we're going to try and work with our partners to remove those barriers to the greatest extent possible. Our Student Wellness Day is approaching, so this is our the first Student Wellness Day that's being put together by the district. So we're planning for a March 20th half day, the Thursday half day of school for the long weekend. There's over a dozen teachers involved. We have teachers from the arts, from physical education, from our mental health team, all putting it together. So we're excited to see that shape up, and I'll plan to share an agenda with the board at our next meeting. But it's exciting. The musical production of Cinderella is getting closer with a March 13th opening. This year it's at the Lake Placid Center for the Arts. And overall, the musical will take place from March 13th to 15th. So with it being at the Lake Placid Center for the Arts, there are certain advantages that we haven't been able to have in our auditorium, including using fog machines, which Apparently, if you're associated with fire department, you know that's probably a problem for our
Usually an issue.
usually an issue, yeah. And also our pit band can be quite a bit larger. So this will be the first pit band that's been gathered together under the direction of Mr. Prosper. So we're excited to see Cinderella live here in Lake Placid in a couple of weeks. I just made a note on school security. So you will, I'm sure, recall that at the start of the year, we had some great dialogue about ways that we can enhance our security in the school district. And since that time, we've been working with an organization called Altera Security. They specialize in school security consulting. And after lots of meetings and walkthroughs and conference calls, they've completed their security assessment report. Overall, they were really impressed with our existing security protocols, the investments that we've made over the course of the last building projects, and the training that we work on with our staff. So all high marks from them, but their job is to identify areas we can see constant improvement. So at our following meeting on March 11th, I'll be reviewing those with the board, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from the site reviewer as well, Chris Blackwell, who will take any questions that you might have. So looking forward to that. I do want to thank our transportation and grounds teams. If you've been shoveling your own driveway, then you can imagine what it's like for the school district. So the walkways and our parking lots have been a constant source of strain for our grounds teams, and they've done wonderfully to maintain that. So we're grateful for them. And our transportation, even days when the weather appears fine, the notch is just a different place entirely. And nonetheless, our drivers are just fantastic, and they make our students safe and feel safe. So I just wanted to particularly thank them, to thank Dave Mayberry and Nikki Corson for their leadership of those departments. They do an excellent job. We have some upcoming outings that I may have referenced earlier, but in the event, I'll just mention them again. Students in grades K through 6 are going to the Olympic Center for a presentation of Alex the Magician. She was here over the Christmas holiday, and she's back again for a special showcase for the kids. Students are also going to Mount Van Hovenberg on March 6th and 7th for the World Championship Skeleton events. And there's a World Championship bobsled event the following week that we're looking at providing opportunities for kids into. Our winter athletics wrap up. So much of our winter athletic season is behind us. There are still teams competing though in sectionals. So our girls basketball team is taking on Scroon Lake. Our boys hockey team is going to be hosting quarterfinals next week. Our boys basketball team is taking on Mariah, and our Nordic skiing boys team won the sectional title this year. So congratulations to them, and congrats to all of our teams, and to SLP girls hockey. Congrats on a great season and a hard-fought loss to Beekman Town, a team that is certainly strong in our region. And then looking ahead, just things that are going to be happening in the district to put on your radar. Preparations are underway for the DC trip in mid-March, and then we'll begin kindergarten and pre-K registrations in early May. And we're already talking about summer school and enrichment in July and August. So that doesn't warm the heart. I don't know what does. On the academic side of the house, students just completed their winter benchmark for math and ELA in our NWEA program. And we're making preparations for our data review meetings. And one of the things that the admin team is doing over the next couple of weeks is just creating a data guide for our different shareholders so that we can reference which reports are used and for what purposes, so that people can have a better understanding of how their students or how they as students are doing in their learning. So lots of good stuff.
Yeah, very busy.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on to our section for information for the board, there are a couple of things under executive content for you to look over. 7A, minutes of the Board of Education was under consent, as is 8A, spring coaches for the 2025 season. So we'll move into additional action items. The proposed contract award and resolution recommended action. Approve the motion as stated below. Whereas the Lake Placid Central School District received, accepted, and opened bids on January 9th, 2025, and whereas the low responsible bidders on the contracts are. Not sure if I'm supposed to read all of this or.
You can just say, as indicated.
Okay, as indicated, and then should I read the be it resolved section?
Yes.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake Placid Central School District hereby awards the above contracts and authorizes the board president to execute the contracts between the district and the above contractors on the recommendation of the superintendent, owner's representative, and architect. Be it further resolved that the school district administration, owner's representative, architect, and legal counsel are directed to draft and execute the necessary documents to commence construction on the project. So, can I have a motion? Motion, please.
I'll move. 1 second. Oh. That really hurt.
You don't even need to go to the chiropractor. Any further discussion on that?
So I just remind the board that this is a unique motion in that, so if you, just so you know, if you vote yes, then you're accepting the bids at the complete scope of the project as indicated. If you vote no, then you're tabling those bids and tabling the project. So.
That said, please vote.
Aaron, my Chromebook's too cold, so I vote no.
Okay.
Mine's too cold, didn't show up at all.
How do you
Must
vote?
be the breeze over here.
I vote no.
So I have, 3 no's, 1 yes, and 1 abstention. So the motion fails.
Okay, 7B was under consent. 7C, donation acceptance, recommended action, whereas the Lake Placid School Board of Education policy number 6255, donations, gifts, and grants to the district allows for the superintendent of schools to accept on behalf of the board gifts, donations, and grants having a value of less than $1,500. Whereas monies have been granted as follows. Adirondack Foundation from Educational Pathways Funds in the amount of $15,000. Now therefore be it resolved in accordance with policy 6255, the Board of Education hereby accepts the checks from the Adirondack Foundation from Educational Pathways Funds in the amount of $15,000. May I have a motion, please?
I move.
Any additional discussion? Many thanks. If not, please vote.
Yes. There's another car over.
It's 5 yes.
8D was under consent. Excuse me, 9D was under consent. We'll be moving now into Lincoln goals with agenda items. I'm sure that some of you have some ideas if you'd like to share them.
I wrote down quite a few.
Down quite a few.
Civics.
Made a major financial decision.
Yes, you did. There were many things under students, first and foremost, certainly with the civics presentation, acknowledging all the different areas that we're working in. Any other ones? Okay, then, thank you. We're moving on to our second for the good of the cause. Again, if anybody has anything that they would like to say, feel free. Come forward this time. Karen, anything via email?
No.
Then we'll move into the adjournment phase. The next meeting date and location. It's, I believe, March 11th. Is our next meeting date. old agenda, there does not seem to be anything there. New agenda. Nothing in that area. So going on to our second proposed executive session, recommended action, motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the sale of real property. May I have a motion, please?
Second. Oh, motion, sorry. I'm sorry.
Motioning and seconding all.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Why not?
Do we have a second?
Dawn,
Oh, yes.
oh, thank you, Doug. That's 5 yes.
Okay, so. Thanks
Thank
for
you all for coming.
coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.